Hi Claire, good to see you. Now, I think you've seen a few of the explorers and adventurers in the last couple of weeks, haven't you?
Yes, it's been lovely. Now we're able to sort of get out and see people. I've been out and visiting some of you, knocking on your doors and saying hello and just having a bit of a catch up with you. I'm sorry if I've not been able to get round to all of you yet. I think there are still some of you I know that haven't quite got round to see. So in the next week or so, I'll be ringing your doorbell and coming to say hello, and just love to find out what you've been up to, what's been good and what's been not so good. I think we're going to start this week, aren't we, Tim, by watching a video clip. Perhaps you can tell us a bit about what it is we're going to watch.
We are, Claire. Now, firstly, adventurers and explorers. Have any of you heard of a very, very famous athlete called Mo Farah? Let me give you a clue. If you have heard of him, you might have seen him doing this after he's run his races, and that was what he called the Mobot. But less of that. We're going to show you a video clip of Mo Farah. Make sure that when you're watching at the beginning, you pick out who he is in the race. There's lots of runners there from lots of different countries. He's the British guy with a British t-shirt on with his name Farah across the middle. Pick him out in the beginning of the clip and then watch him all the way through, and watch particularly what happens in the middle, what happens to him, and then what happens in the end. So we'll show the clip and we'll explain what this has got to do with our passage this week.
Okay.
Now, I hope you all enjoyed that. Did you notice, and in fact, I'm sure you did, what happened to Mo Farah in the middle there? He got tripped, probably not deliberately, and he fell over. Now, normally in a big race like that, if you get tripped and fall over, that's the end of your race. But did you see what Mo did? He got up and he ran the rest of the race, and in fact, he won the race. So he got knocked back. He suffered some hardship in the middle, but he kept going. And I think that's got quite a lot to do with what we're going to look at this week, doesn't it, Claire?
It is. We're going to be hearing about Saul. Well, actually, he's changed his name to Paul. Probably you remember 2 weeks ago, don't you? Saul met Jesus on the road to Damascus, and his life was completely changed. He went from wanting to stop Christians to telling people about Jesus, to believing that Jesus is alive and wanting to tell everybody the good news about Jesus. And Jesus gave him a mission to tell people about Jesus. So his life was turned around, and he also changed his name. So he's now called Paul. And we're going to hear what happens to Paul on that mission as he's out telling people the good news about Jesus. He is facing some hardship and some knockbacks, but like Mo Farah, he gets knocked back, but he just gets up and keeps going. Nothing can stop him. Yeah, so I think, Tim, you're going to give us a bit of an introduction, and you're going to tell us actually what happened to Paul and his friend Barnabas as they travelled to tell people in all sorts of different places the good news about Jesus. Yeah. And then I'll be back to help you think through what that means for us. And actually, this is the end of our series in Acts. We're going to start another bit of the Bible the following Sunday. So we're going to have a little bit of a think about all that we've been learning over these past 6 or 7 weeks. So I'll see you a little bit later, and I'm going to hand over to Tim now.
This week, we switch from Peter to Paul, telling others about the good news of Jesus to both Jewish and non-Jewish people. And we will see that even when Paul suffers great hardship and gets knocked back for telling others about Jesus, he carries on, and the good news continues to spread. So I'm going to tell you the story using some simple pictures. In Lystra, there was a man who had been born crippled and had never walked. This man was listening to Paul speak. Paul looked straight at him and saw that the man believed God could heal him. So he cried up, "Stand on your feet." The man jumped up and began walking around. When the crowds saw what Paul did, they shouted in their own language. They said, "The gods have become like men. They have come down to us." And the people began to call Barnabas Zeus. They called Paul Hermes, because he was the main speaker. The temple of Zeus was near the city. The priest of this temple brought some bulls and some flowers to the city gates. The priest and the people wanted to offer a sacrifice to Paul and Barnabas. But when the apostles, Barnabas and Paul, saw what they were about to do, they tore their clothes in anger. Then they ran in among the people and shouted, "Men, why are you doing these things? We are only men, human beings like you. We are bringing you the good news. We are telling you to turn away from those worthless things and turn to the true living God. He is the one who made the sky, the earth, the sea, and everything that is in them. In the past, God let all the nations do what they wanted. Yet he did things to prove he is real. He shows kindness to you. He gives you rain from heaven and crops at the right times. He gives you food and fills your hearts full of joy." Even with these words, they were barely able to keep the crowd from offering sacrifices to them. Then some Jews came from Antioch and Iconium. They persuaded the people to turn against Paul, and they threw stones at Paul and dragged him out of the town. They thought they killed him, but the followers gathered around him, and he got up and went back into the town. The next day, he and Barnabas left and went to the city of Derbe. Paul and Barnabas told the good news in Derbe, and many became followers. Paul and Barnabas returned to Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch. In those cities, they made the followers of Jesus stronger. They helped them stay in the faith. They said, "We must suffer many things to enter God's kingdom." The end. And now, Claire is going to help us understand exactly what Mo Farah had to do with this and what this whole story means for us as we tell others the good news about Jesus.
Wow, what a story. Paul and Barnabas stoned and left for dead. I don't know about you. How would you have felt if that had happened to you? Yeah, I think I might have felt a little bit like this. Sort of worried and anxious and sad. It must have hurt. But what did Paul and Barnabas do? What did they do? Well, we've heard, haven't we, that being knocked down didn't knock them back. No, they got up and they carried on. I probably have packed all my stuff up and thought, I'm out of here. I'm going to go back home where it's going to be nice and safe and where nobody's going to want to try and kill me. But that's not what Paul and Barnabas did. No, they got up, and perhaps you remember, so the map here, I don't know whether you can see it very well, But they left Lystra and they went on to the next city. And what did they do in the next city? Well, let's remind ourselves from Acts. What they did was they continued to preach the good news about Jesus. They were knocked down, but they weren't knocked back. They got up and they kept on going. In Acts chapter 14, it says, "So they threw stones at Paul and dragged him out of the town. They thought that they had killed him. But the followers gathered around him, and he got up and went back into the town. And the next day he and Barnabas left and went to the city of Derbe. And when they got there, well, they told the good news, and many people became followers." But why? Why did they do that? Let's just have a little bit of a think. I wonder if you can remember where we started right back at the beginning of Acts. It was quite a long time ago. It was sort of the end of April, beginning of May. We started, didn't we? Do you remember my jar with my grains of rice? We started with just a very small number of people. There, you probably can't even see them. There are so few of them, you can't even see them in the vase. Just a very few number of people who were following Jesus. And before Jesus left, he gave them a promise. And that promise was in Acts chapter 1, verse 8. And Jesus said, "But the Holy Spirit will come to you. Then you will receive power. You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in all of Judea, in Samaria, and every part of the world." You remember, can't you? At Pentecost, the Holy Spirit came and it gave those small number of people power to continue Jesus' mission, to tell people about Jesus. And you remember, even on that first day, 3,000 people became followers of Jesus. So there were lots and lots of people who became followers of Jesus. And those first followers, Peter and the others, they kept telling people about Jesus. So more and more people became followers of Jesus. And, well, you probably remember, don't you? Some people tried to stop them telling people about Jesus. Perhaps you remember the week where they were put in prison. But God sent an angel. He got them out of prison. The religious authorities said stop. But Peter and the others wouldn't stop. And then something really terrible happened. Stephen got killed. But the followers of Jesus didn't stop telling people about Jesus. By the power of the Holy Spirit, they kept on telling people. And the good news kept on spreading and spreading and spreading. And last week we heard how it had spread not just to people like Peter, but to people like Cornelius, that the good news is for everyone. You see, God's plan was to make sure that the good news spread and spread and spread. From Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to everyone in the world, even to us here in Cambridge. And God sent the Holy Spirit to give the followers of Jesus, people like Peter, but also people like us, the power to keep on telling people about Jesus, even when we're knocked back and knocked down. Because sometimes that will happen, that people will perhaps laugh at us, or people will say that we're stupid to talk about Jesus, or people just won't want to hear. But actually, nothing can stop God's plan. And God gives us the Holy Spirit, the power to keep on going and keep telling people about Jesus. Because even 2,000 years later, there are many people who still need to hear about Jesus. There are people you know. There are people I know. They still need to hear about Jesus. Our friends, people at school, people who live in our road, people that we do sport with, people perhaps we go to brownies with or swimming with or ballet. They all need to hear about Jesus. And we can tell them so that more and more people can become part of God's family. And we can pray and ask God to help us to do that, because we can't do it on our own. And that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to hand over to Tim, who's going to help us to think about how we can pray for all those people that we know who still need to hear about Jesus. Thank you very much.
Hello again. At Explorers, we often say a prayer together at the end about what we have learned to help us be the people Jesus wants us to be. So this week, it would be good to pray that we could be like Paul when telling others about Jesus, in that if we're teased or ignored, or even worse, we wouldn't stop telling more people about Jesus, and we'd still carry on. There are so many people out there who need to hear about Jesus. So let's say a prayer together, which looks like this. So the prayer here, what I'd like to do is we're going to thank Jesus for showing us how Paul was, and then we're going to ask for Jesus' help to tell others and help us to be someone who's always looking to spread the good news. So let's say this prayer together, shall we? If I start, we can all join in. Dear Jesus, thank you for showing us how Paul got up and carried on after he faced hardships, telling others about you. Please help me to keep telling others about you at all times. Please help me to remember it won't always be easy, but also that you will always be with me. Please help me to be someone who is always looking to spread the good news about who you are and what you have done for us. Amen. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've learned lots about Paul, probably Mo Farah as well. And you all have a great week, and we'll see you all next Sunday. Bye-bye.